Hello, and welcome to this instalment of In Conversation. My name is Dr. Karl. I'm the school's relationship manager, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Nicola Sinclair, who's the head of student recruitment and widening participation. Hi, Nicola. How are we doing?
Hi, I'm good, thanks, Karl. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. Nicola, today we're going to be focusing on widening participation as a theme, as a topic. And I want to start off by talking about contextual offers. Why do universities make these?
Well, that's a good question. Contextual offers essentially is we recognise that not all students are operating in the same context, that they face very different personal circumstances, whether that's in terms of where they're living perhaps, or in terms of their schooling or their personal challenges, and that can affect their grades. So essentially it's our way of mitigating against those challenges in order to make our offers as accessible as possible.
Okay, so teachers listening will be thinking, that's great, so it's great that we recognise that. How do applicants actually find out if they're eligible?
Each university should publish details of its contextual offers on its website. For the University of Exeter, for example, we've got information under our admissions policy, which is on our website, our undergraduate study site, but actually we've also got details in each of the programme entries. So if you want to come and study maths, you can have a look and see what our standard offer is and our contextual offer is. And that may vary depending on your circumstances. So for example, if you're a care leaver, for example, then we may offer up to 2 grades below the standard offer, because we recognise when you've been in care and the circumstances surrounding that means that you've had a number of challenges which are likely to affect your grades.
Now, you mentioned there, and you've used University of Exeter, obviously that's what we work with as an example. The way that universities deal and handle with contextual offers, is that a standardised approach across the sector, or do different universities do things differently?
No, it's not standardised. It very much depends on each individual university, their priorities in terms of access, or perhaps it might involve the geographical context in which they're operating. And so it's important to look at each university's policy. So, for example, here at Exeter, we make contextual offers on the basis of if students come from areas of low representation in higher education, or if they are attending a state school and they also, with a high volume of students from the high deprivation areas, or if students are living in areas of deprivation. But also we make contextual offers to those students who are working with us on fair access programmes like Exeter Scholars, Realising Opportunities, or the Sutton Trust Pathways to Law programme. And we will have been working with those students for some considerable time, and they will meet a wide range of widening participation criteria, in addition to care leavers and also asylum seekers and refugees.
Fantastic. Now let's look at the support in place for students from underrepresented group backgrounds. What support do we have in place once they get to university?
Again, this may vary across the sector, but this tends to fall into a number of categories. So firstly, financial support. Most universities will have some form of bursary or financial support certainly for students on the lowest incomes. Here at Exeter, that's called the Access to Exeter Bursary, and students don't have to apply for that bursary. It's automatically given to them on the basis of the household income information that they provide on their student funding application. So there may be also specific support, financial support for certain groups of students. So again, we have support packages in place for students who don't have any family support, for example, because of family breakdown, and they might be estranged from their families. So we have specific bursary for them. For care leavers, for example, we have a full tuition fee waiver for students who have been in care meeting certain eligibility criteria. And also we may have other types of bursary support available. So there's the kind of financial aspect. But then there may also be a range of support which is often offered or targeted towards specific students. So all universities will offer help for disabled students, for example. Here at Exeter, we'll encourage students to let us know as soon as possible whether they have a disability, so we can contact them before they arrive to make sure that they have the support they need in place on day one. But we also have a range of other support available. So, for instance, some students meeting certain widening participation criteria will be able to apply for a paid internship, where the university will pay essentially for their internship, and that will be subsidised, or specific employability skills which may be available. Again, this will vary between universities. Some universities may have a programme specifically for students meeting widening participation criteria, while others might have different support which they can access at different times depending on their specific needs.
Now, you mentioned the access to Exeter bursary, that is an automatic sort of assessment. In terms of the other supports available, is that something that students should be looking at reaching out to now, or is it something they need to wait until they get to university in order to access that?
It very much depends on what it is. I think the main thing I would do is to encourage them to look on university websites to find out what's available, so they can make sure that they can access it when it's appropriate to do so. So, for example, we were very conscious last year that many students might be coming to study in a blended learning environment because of COVID and may not have the computer equipment that they needed. So we were encouraging students to apply to us before they arrived if they needed financial support with computer equipment. And that meant that post-registration, we were able to support them as quickly as possible, for example. Whereas something like an internship scheme, we wouldn't be expecting students to be applying for that scheme until perhaps year 2 or year 3. So they wouldn't need to be thinking about that straight away.
Okay. Now, the final question here is in terms of students preparing for that transition from where they are now, school and college, to where they hopefully will be, university, how should they prepare for that?
Well, I think the first thing is to do a bit of research. If students have particular needs or they're facing particular challenges, then it makes sense for them if they do a little bit of their research, have a look on the university website, find out what support is available for them. So again, at the University of Exeter, we have a whole website which talks about our support for widening participation students, for example, which explains what's available pre-arrival, when they arrive, and also later in their studies. So a bit of their own research is a good idea. So the other thing is that students will receive quite a lot of useful information from their universities prior to arrival. And that can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes if they don't realise what's useful to them. So I encourage them, put it in a safe space so they can access the information and return to it. And also some universities and subjects might invite them to take part in programmes pre-arrival. So, for example, a transition programme or an online module which will help them to prepare. Now, this is usually completely up to them. It's discretionary, but I encourage them to take up those opportunities because they're full of really useful information, whether that's helping to prepare them with their studies, whether it's actually helping them to put them in contact with other students, or perhaps making them aware of the whole range of support which will be available to them. So yes, do a bit of research and take up any opportunities that are offered and save any information so you can absorb it later.
Fantastic. Nicola, thank you very much for your input today and for providing us with that great insight into sort of contextual offers and support available. And thank you for listening. We'll be back again next week, so please do join us again. Thank you.